Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. ESPN Radio, 250-plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. My apologies for not being here on the television tube last week. Before I get into anything about All-Star Weekend, Colin Kaepernick, Major League Baseball, list goes on and on, I just want to let y'all know, trust you me when I tell you, you did not want to see me or hear me on the air last week. I lost my voice. Mucus was everywhere. The flu, the bug, man, it took me out. I was out of commission for about 4 or 5 days. I didn't know what the hell's going on. And I'm going to tell you what I give a clue to, though, anyway. Even though my daughter was sick, that's true. I'm telling you something right now, John. I can tell you right now, you can book it. If I shake hands with people and their hands are sweaty, you can book I'm going to get sick. I'm trying to tell y'all right now, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to ban people from shaking my hand. I'm going to wear gloves or something. I'm telling you. I'm telling you right now. It just happens. It never fails. I always get sick when I shake hands, and people that shake hands with you, their hands are sweaty and all of that other stuff. I mean, it's just, ladies and gentlemen, it's just disgusting. It's just no other way to slice it. But nevertheless, I went through it. I've weathered the storm to some degree. I am back, full throttle, ready to go. Lots of stuff to get into, lots of stuff that I didn't get into last week, but I am back and in full effect and rearing to go. First things first, NBA All-Star Weekend, I would label a success. I would label it a success because, listen, it's not the all-pro game in the National Football League where there's no defense and you know what, it makes no sense whatsoever for them to be out on the football field. In the court of in a game of basketball, somebody could be in a park playing by themselves and you want to watch them because the individual exploits, the ability to jump out of the gym, courtesy of the Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo. You remember that bounce pass alley-oop from Steph Curry yesterday? You want to see stuff like that. You want to see the three-point shooting contest that, by the way, was won by Joe Harris of the Brooklyn Nets. Not only are they on the come-up, we understand why, because they got guys like him who's on the come-up. This brother can shoot. He can shoot. And there's no question that he put on a show in a three-point shooting contest Saturday night, beating Steph Curry, I might add, and Buddy Hield. I thought when Steph Curry hit 9 straight, it was a wrap. But it ended up that, you know what, wasn't going down like that. My favorite thing to see is the three-point shooting contest because obviously it takes skill to be able to shoot from long range. Whether somebody's in your face or you're by yourself, when it goes up, that doesn't mean it's going in. So people who can actually shoot, it matters. It really, really matters. The slam dunk contest, look, Dennis Smith is a high riser. This brother's a skywalker, no doubt about it. The New York Knicks guard recently traded from the Dallas Mavericks, a guy who should have been drafted by the New York Knicks, number 8 overall, instead of them Phil Jackson electing to take Frank Ntilikina, giving us further preponderance of evidence about how he was asleep at the wheel for the New York Knicks, because Dennis Smith is somebody he should have drafted. Nevertheless, he's in a New York Knicks uniform now. He's got potential. He's got a lot of promise, a lot of athleticism, definitely has hype, got a lot of heart, ain't scared, etc. And being on a stage that is Madison Square Garden certainly does not hurt. But I will tell you this. You shouldn't be allowed to miss that many dunks. I remember years ago when Nate Robinson, one of my favorites, I love Nate Robinson. But I never forget years ago, I didn't think he deserved to win the slam dunk contest over Andre Iguodala because he had missed so many dunks. Now, Hamidou Diallo obviously won the slam dunk title because he jumped over Shaq and went and did a dunk with his elbow in the rim, and that's great. Well, when I look at, I'm talking about Hamidou Diallo for the Oklahoma City Thunder. When I look at, for me personally, when I look at a dunk contest, I don't want to see all of those misses. As far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't be allowed more than 3 misses. You shouldn't be allowed to just do it over and over and over again until you make it. No, I ain't down with that. You got 3 chances to make a dunk. And oh, by the way, that wasn't the dunk of the weekend. The dunk of the weekend was the Greek freak, Giannis, with the alley-oop off the bounce pass from Steph Curry. Amadou Diallo jumping over Shaq, as impressive as it was, and it was impressive, there was still that left arm on the left shoulder of Shaq with him pushing off of that in order to make the dunk. So, yeah, he might have deserved to win the dunk contest, but it wasn't the dunk of the weekend. The Greek freak had the dunk of the weekend. And next year, he's alluded to joining the slam dunk contest. He says if he joins it, Donovan Mitchell chimed in and said, you do it, I'm down, I'll do it. Imagine if Zion Williams is in the NBA, Zion Williamson out of Duke, which he's expected to be, and he decides to be in the dunk contest as well. Just imagine how special that would be, ladies and gentlemen. That would be something that's absolutely positively special. John, if you can, give me some tissue, please. I'm still sniffling, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry to put y'all all in my business, but it's just the truth. All I'm saying to you is that next year's dunk contest and beyond is going to be entertaining, and I'm of the mindset that when I look at it, me personally, I'm just of the big deal for me. I liked NBA All-Star Weekend, and I think they did a damn good job with it. Having said all of that, I think there should be some modifications, and the modifications should be with that slam dunk contest. Skill competition never moved me, but I understand how some people might like it. Slam dunk contest, three-point shooting contest, got no problems with the three-point shooting contest. When I look at the slam dunk contest, for me, 3 misses, max. Anything more than 3 misses, you got to go. Does not work. Plain and simple. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Lots of stuff to get into today. Make no mistake about it. And definitely we will make sure to do that because certain things that we have to talk about are just unavoidable. Anthony Davis, GM of New Orleans, Dell Demps getting fired. Ultimately, Anthony Davis saying that he didn't eliminate the Boston Celtics from his list. We'll get into all of that. Kyrie Irving, is he going to be a Celtic next year? Probably not. But we don't definitively know. LeBron James focused on getting to the Los Angeles Lakers to the postseason, whether or not he's going to pull that off, or is he going to come up short because Sacramento and the Clippers ain't having it and ain't going to let the Lakers in? That's something to consider. All of those things are relevant. All of those things matter. And those are the kind of things that we'll get into. One of the other things we got to get into is what team is going to have the most pressure on their shoulders this latter part, these last 25-plus games or so. With about 25 games to go for most teams or less, or in some cases a game or 2 more, this is the stretch run for the NBA season. Who's under the most pressure? Some would say Boston. Some would say Lakers. Some would say Philly. We'll get into all of that as the show progresses today, right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. I wanted to transition to the news about Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick, for those of you who were living under a rock over the last couple of years, is the former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers that essentially was blackballed from the NFL, courtesy of taking a knee during the national anthem to bring attention to social inequality and racial injustice taking place in this nation. Obviously, it was something that caused a lot of furor, stirred even more so by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who on September 24th, 2017, called for league owners to fire players who would dare protest. Obviously, the protest continued and elevated even more so thereafter because even owners like Jerry Jones ended up taking a knee because the president was speaking out against the league. And it sort of compelled the owners to side with the players in taking a knee. All of those things transpired. This is not news. Here's what the news is. The Super Bowl halftime show, as we all know, was pretty whack. Okay? Adam Levine and those boys. And I mean, it just wasn't a great concert in a lot of people's eyes. Let's just call it what it is. Okay? Not knocking them by any stretch of the imagination because I like their music. They just weren't very good for the Super Bowl halftime show. After you had Bruno Mars and Beyonce in previous years, that was a significant and precipitous drop-off. Let's just call it what it is. Let's call it what it is. Rihanna was supposed to perform, but elected not to in support of Colin Kaepernick, who tweeted his support of her, Jay-Z, and others who refused to perform. And then the news came down. The news just came down. And that news was that Colin Kaepernick and the National Football League had reached a financial settlement. I'm talking about Colin Kaepernick and safety Eric Reid of the Carolina Panthers, a former teammate of Colin Kaepernick's in San Francisco, who took a knee in support of his teammate and the cause that he was fighting on behalf of, who got in the face of Malcolm Jenkins of the Philadelphia Eagles on the football field and had to be restrained because he felt like Malcolm Jenkins co-opted the movement per se. Well, Eric Reid and Colin Kaepernick have reached a financial settlement with the National Football League in their joint collusion complaint against the league and will take no further action. Now, obviously, if you listen to various reports, nobody knows definitively what the settlement entails. My man Mike Freeman from the Bleacher Report, I believe, alluded to it being anywhere from $50 to $80 million. We simply don't know. But I will tell you this. I need to know before I'm happy about it. Let me be very, very clear. I believe that Colin Kaepernick had every right to take a knee. I believe that Colin Kaepernick was blackballed. I believe all of that. Having said all of that, I'm one of those people who also recognizes the capitalistic society that we're living in, who America is, and the fact that in the private industry, you have a right, if you think somebody is going to be a headache, to say you don't want them as being a part of your product. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm on the record. I want to state very, very clearly, I do not expect white billionaires to harbor the elevated level of sensitivity all of us believe folks should have. I just don't anticipate that. I expect green to be their color of choice. I expect anything that promotes and facilitates and stimulates the flow of more green to be their preference. And anything that gets in the way of that, I expect them to debunk, if not flat out try to eradicate. Plain and simple. I have never been one to believe that Colin Kaepernick's case of collusion against the National Football League had any legs, because I don't believe collusion was required for them to reach the collective conclusion that they reached. They don't have to talk with one another, text one another, email one another to draw the conclusion that at some point in time he was perceived as being bad for business. I don't believe that. I don't believe they had to communicate with one another to know that or to believe that. Not to say that it was factually correct, because when the NFL has proven that they've been generating revenue and ratings indeed haven't been lost the way one would have surmised a while ago, clearly that wasn't the case. But I can understand how owners feared that. And I certainly could predict that they would act accordingly to ostracize him from the National Football League in an effort to derail him from compromising their bottom line. If Colin Kaepernick had a case, it was the fact that in a discovery judgment, if the courts were to find that there was just cause and therefore somehow, some way down the line was willing to give Colin Kaepernick and his team access to emails and text messages on behalf of the owners, I don't believe collusion is what you would have found. But I do believe there's far more damaging things to those individual owners personally that they may not have wanted disclosed. They may not have wanted their business exposed and out on Front Street. And I think as a result, that incentivized them to reach a settlement. So I'm not surprised by that. And I'm not knocking Colin Kaepernick for filing the case against them and ultimately reaching a settlement with them. What I have a problem with is folks acting like we don't need to know the particulars. We don't need to know specifically what happened. What did he acquiesce and capitulate to? I'll be damned if I don't want to know the answer to that question. I want to emphasize, I don't give a damn how much money Colin Kaepernick got. I don't care if it was $50 million. I don't care if it was $100 million. I don't care if it was $5 million. Anything that's commiserate with what quarterbacks in the National Football League were making, I'm down with Colin Kaepernick getting. Because when in March of 2017, he was available to be picked up by other teams, and you said no to him, but you acquired Mark Sanchez, and you got Mike Glennon, and you got Josh McCown, and you got E.J. Manuels, and they have jobs in the National Football League. We got a problem. Not to say that Colin Kaepernick was ever better than Matthew Stafford or anybody like that, but when Matthew Stafford is getting $27 million, when Jay Cutler was making $26 million, when Jimmy Garoppolo ultimately, with 7 starts on his resume, signs a deal for $137.5 million with $72 million guaranteed. I have no problem with Colin Kaepernick getting $50 to $100 million from the National Football League. Because what you're saying is, despite the fact that you were 1-10 in your last 11 starts, despite the fact that you were 3-19 in your last 19 starts as a quarterback, statistically speaking, there are various things out there that proves that Colin Kaepernick wasn't necessarily the problem. That there were things that transpired around him that dictated those kind of results and that outcome. And that he should not be, it shouldn't be held against him as if he's some scrub that couldn't play. It is entirely plausible that Colin Kaepernick could have made $50 million over the last few years. It is entirely, when you consider the money that quarterbacks are getting paid, it's entirely plausible that Colin Kaepernick could have ended up signing for over $50 million in a 3-year span. Absolutely. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that if you're Colin Kaepernick, you have allowed yourself to be martyred. Not just by members of the minority community, the desolate and the disenfranchised communities that exist in our country. You have allowed yourself to be martyred with the things that you said and the positions you swore to take. You vowed never to change or deviate or capitulate to anything until you saw things being done to progress forward towards change as it pertained to the things you were complaining about. I am a black man. I deeply appreciate Colin Kaepernick's position, and I support him wholeheartedly, and I thank him for his courage. But what I'm trying to say is, in this settlement, that does not mean that myself nor any of you don't have the right to know specifically what you're agreeing to. Did you agree not to stand for the national anthem? If you're ever employed by the NFL again, did you agree to stand up and not take a knee? Are you suddenly going to take the position that racial inequality and social injustice is not the problem of the National Football League and it's not something that they should be held accountable for or beholden to address? What exactly is it that you have agreed to? When I read this statement and I see it says here, while sources declined to offer specifics for the decision, or as part of that confidentiality agreement, it is believed both sides signed a non-disclosure agreement agreeing not to speak publicly about the details of the case or the settlement. Or when I hear multiple NFL players adopted Kaepernick's protest in 2017, hoping to draw attention to social justice and racial inequality issues. I'm saying with all the people that Colin Kaepernick, figuratively or literally, sat idly by and allowed to embrace and adopt his cause, and I'm not saying he was wrong to do that. I'm saying you don't owe folks an explanation as to what specifically you agreed to. Forget the money. I'm not asking about the money. I don't care about the money. The money doesn't matter to me. I want to know what he agreed to with the National Football League. That's what I want to know. Did you agree you'll never play in the NFL again? Did you agree if you did play in the NFL again, you will stand for the national anthem? Do you still have the freedom to protest and take a knee if you so choose? What exactly did you capitulate to? See, it's moments like this where I'll highlight. Jonathan, you're too young. You're a young whippersnapper. Your breath smells like Similac wet behind the ears. You're too young. You might not know any better. JC, you might be a little bit older than me. Nuno, where were you in that? Portugal, Mexico? I mean, where the hell was Nuno at that particular moment? I don't know. Kat, were you in Russia? I don't know. But in this country, those who are a bit older are incredibly familiar with what Muhammad Ali had to endure. Refusing to enter the armed forces, represent this nation in the Vietnam War. We know what kind of fallout Muhammad Ali had to endure because of that. Lost his ability to make a living, to defend his crown. He was the best, stripped of the world heavyweight title. Sentenced to 5 years in prison. The fines and everything else that came with it. Tell me when Muhammad Ali failed to articulate his position throughout his struggle. See, we want to ignore that. I understand we're living in a different time. And I understand that Colin Kaepernick and others with one tweet could potentially reach more, or actually literally reach more than folks could back in the day on national television. I get all of that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Muhammad Ali not going underground. I'm talking about him being front and center. I'm talking about him reminding us all that no Viet Cong ever called him the N-word. I'm talking about him bringing up the back of the bus, bringing up restaurants, bringing up water fountains and all of those things. And the access that African Americans and minorities were denied. I'm talking about him speaking up and speaking out about that in the throes of that hostility and that venom being aimed in his direction. We ain't seen Colin Kaepernick anywhere. But at an award ceremony receiving an award, we haven't heard him talk. And maybe most of you feel he doesn't need to. And you might be right. I don't know. And I'm not questioning any of that. All I'm saying is this. Everybody has invested themselves emotionally, one way or another, into the Colin Kaepernick situation. And all I'm saying is, I simply want to know, now that it's over, what was agreed to? 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. I should have told you it was time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. But now that I'm finished, that was Straight Talk Wireless. Nationwide coverage in America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. By the way, when you're hiring, you don't want to waste time sorting through dozens of irrelevant resumes. You want an efficient way to get to a short list of qualified candidates. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screening questions based on your job requirements, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. Discover why 3 million businesses use Indeed for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. Search for greatness. Search Indeed. 888-SAY-ESPN. Back with more. I got a lot more to say about this subject. and more in a minute. So don't touch that dial. It's Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Winter or summer, rain or shine, with the Peloton bike, it's always the perfect weather to sweat. And with up to 14 live rides a day and over 10,000 more on demand, nothing will get between you.
99 from 1-800-Flowers.com. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Before I get to the phones, on a Major League Baseball note, John, looking at my producer here, something else has been on my mind. Manny Machado, and Bryce Harper, 26-year-olds, phenoms, both looking to get paid. I think they got an offer, 8 years, $240 million, or close to $250 million, to Machado. You know, I don't know who the hell offered them that. I think it was the Padres, but I'm not sure. I know the Phillies were interested in both of them. And in Harper's case, you got the Phillies, the Padres, the Giants, the White Sox. In Machado's case, at least the Phillies and the Padres. I'm not giving anybody 8 years or 10-year deals. I know there's a lot of numbers out there, you know, where people are trying to make the case, you know what? 10-year deals are not so bad. Look at the guys in history who had 10-year deals. Okay? I mean, they look at it and they say, you know what? It's not as bad as you think. There's only 8, 10-year, $100+ million contracts that have been signed in the history of Major League Baseball. Giancarlo Stanton, Alex Rodriguez twice when he was 25 years of age, and then again when he was 32 years of age. Albert Pujols, Robinson Cano, Joey Votto, Derek Jeter, Troy Tulowitzki. And I guess you could make the argument that from a numbers perspective, some of them pan out. Jeter panned out. Alex Rodriguez panned out. Giancarlo Stanton, Robinson Cano in the midst of their contracts right now. You know, we don't know what's going to happen with them. Troy Tulowitzki, when he was on the field, he flat out balled. We get all of that. Here's my position. It's baseball, man. It's 162 games. And if you're telling me a guy deserves to get paid because he's box office and he brings people through the turnstile, so as a result, he'll pay for himself, I'm down with that. I'm down with that. But it's too many intangibles that come into Major League Baseball. You could be an absolute monster and do nothing. I mean, accomplish nothing. You're going home at the beginning of every October because you ain't going to be in the postseason. I mean, if it's about winning, I'm just not giving up those dollars. But I will acknowledge this. Because it's 162 games, because there's 81 home games a year, if you've got a guy that's box office, that people walk through the turnstiles to see them play, then I'm not going to knock it. But here's my counter proposal to all of that. I have no issue with the money. It's the years I have a problem with. I'm not giving up more than a 6-year deal. I'm a proponent of give them however much they're worth annually for 6 years. You know what I'm saying? If a guy's worth $50 million a year, go ahead and give it to him. I'm not trying to cap it. Only thing I'm trying to cap is the years. That's what I'm trying to cap. Because I don't believe for 1 second. I mean, Albert Pujols is a perfect example. He's no scrub. He could play. I love Albert Pujols. But 10 years, $240 million? I mean, to me, he's worth $24 million a year on average. Easy. I got that. But you're projecting him to be just as effective 10 years from now. He's a human being. 10 years for a professional athlete? In this day and age with youngsters on the come up every single year? No, I'm not doing it. I'm not giving out no 10-year deal. I'm just not doing it. I'm just not doing it. I'm sorry. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Getting back to Kaepernick, I'm going to say it again. I want to know what the settlement entails. And I'm not talking about money. I don't care about his money. I hope he got as much as he could. Because you got too many scrub quarterbacks employed in the National Football League that don't do a damn thing that are getting paid. So why not Kaepernick? Why not Kaepernick? I got that. But what I'm talking about is as specifically as it pertains to the cause, What did you settle for? What did you settle for? Not going to protest any longer? Not going to play in the NFL any longer? You're going to stand for the national anthem? What are you going to do? I want to know what the details are. And I understand why we may never know. Because the NFL, I mean, if the NFL forced it upon Kaepernick, they might view them, they might get viewed as being more villainous than they already are. I got it, but I don't care. In my perfect world, all I want to know are the details. I want to know the details of what Colin Kaepernick had to settle for. That's what I want to know. That's just me. 888-SAY-ESPN. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Charles, talk to me. What's up?
Yeah, like, I don't get it. Why do you need to know? Kaepernick don't have to say anything. Like, didn't before he said that he wasn't going to stand? I mean, he wasn't going to kneel anymore. He said that before.
Let me ask you a question. Did you support Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so let me ask you a question here. First of all, we don't have to know anything, so let's not be literal. All right? We may never know. So obviously I don't have to know. I ain't going to lose no sleep over it. I'm just telling you what my preference would be. Now let me ask you a question. So you supported Colin Kaepernick, obviously so. The cause is just, no doubt about that. Shoot, you're African-American, you're a minority in this country. Shoot, the hell with just supporting them. You got to appreciate them. But here's the question. Don't you want to know what they asked him to capitulate to and whether or not he's obliged in order for this settlement?
I don't need to know that.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you what you want. I didn't ask you what you need. Obviously, he ain't your family. He ain't paying your bills. He ain't stopping you from eating, breathing, and sleeping. So, of course, you don't need it. What I'm asking you is, what do you want? Do you want to see him playing in the NFL again?
Yeah, that'd be good.
So let me ask you a question. What if part of the agreement is you are to never play in the NFL again, and you are to shut the hell up about social issues and beyond, particularly as it pertains to the National Football League for the rest of your natural life? You cool with that?
Nah, I'm not cool with that. But then I think more of Kaepernick to be like, he's not going to be like, yeah, I'm good with that.
No. What I'm saying to you is, what if he did agree to that?
He's the type of person that would do that.
No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, wouldn't you want to know whether he did or not disagree with it or not?
I'm good with not knowing.
Okay, good. That's you. Charles, congratulations. You're not curious. You'll never be accused of being curious Charles or curious George. Congratulations. I'm curious. Sorry. Maurice, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Stephen A., man, I agree with you 100%. I think it's a bigger thing than just the glamorous hush money. You think it has something to do with the Nike contract because he didn't need the money. You think maybe that make him obligation to play because of the Nike contract?
Well, I'm not going to say he didn't need the money or not. I don't know his financial situation. And again, I'm not judging him one way or the other about anything monetarily. Nothing. I don't care how much money he got. What I'm interested in knowing is these issues that you spoke upon, that you swore to never relent upon. Is that the case now? Did you decide that indeed you're going to be silenced, that you're going to be muzzled, that you're going to stand for the national anthem if you were to play in the National Football League? Or did you forego your National Football League career so you could address these causes, but off the NFL playing field? What is it exactly that you agreed to capitulate to? I want to know that. You made it all our business. We didn't go into your home and find this out. You brought what you felt was a pertinent issue in your heart, which I applaud. You brought that to the center of the world because you decided to use the NFL brand and the NFL platform that you had available to you to bring attention to these issues, to take a stand. That's what you decided to do. So I want to know, what did you capitulate to in order to reach the settlement? I don't think that's far-fetched for me to want to know. I may never know. He's under no obligation to tell me. Neither is the National Football League. But I want to know. If I had my druthers, I would not be interested in knowing the amount of money that Colin Kaepernick got in this settlement. What I would be interested in knowing is what he capitulated to, man. That's what I want to know.
You think maybe got bigger than his? Do you think maybe this overall got bigger than him, and he just want to fade off and like, you know what? I can't deal with this. I can't be a mortal like Brother Muhammad.
It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. But there's a lot of people that martyred Colin Kaepernick and adopted his cause and used his name. And listen, where are all of these people demanding that Colin Kaepernick have a job in the National Football League? Where are those people? How come they're not standing up and saying, excuse me, there's still a whole bunch of scrubs in the National Football League that Colin Kaepernick could quarterback better than? We've heard his lawyer saying he wants to be back in the NFL. We've even heard them give teams like the Patriots and the Carolina Panthers. And as far as I'm concerned, the NFL does not win in this equation at all unless Colin Kaepernick gets an opportunity to play for a National Football League team. Because if they don't do that, then all they did was pay for his silence. That's all they did. But if he's allowed to come back into the National Football League and has an opportunity to compete and play and have a job in the National Football League the way Eric Reid does, who signed a 3-year extension with the Carolina Panthers, now we talk about something different. But if that doesn't happen, then what exactly was done? That's what I'm saying. Got to run. 888, say ESPN. You're listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News, by the way. If you miss any of the show today, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast. Brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no... The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Coming to you as I love to do every weekday afternoon over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888 say ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. That is the Stephen A. Smith Show in 250 plus markets across the United States of America. It is the Stephen A. Smith Show on Sirius XM channel 80. It is the Stephen A. Smith Show simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Wendy's, proud sponsor of the 2019 John R. Wooden Player of the Year. Plus, tune in tonight for college basketball action as Virginia battles Virginia Tech, presented by Peloton. Coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. It is my honor and privilege to have my next guest. He's my former colleague at ESPN. He's a former NFL player, primarily with the Pittsburgh Steelers and, of course, the Chicago Bears as well. He's an outstanding NFL analyst, incredibly connected to all things National Football League. Right now, he's associated with something called Your Call Football. I am talking about my buddy, my friend, one of the best analysts I know on the National Football League, the one and only Merril Hoge is on the line with us right now. What's going on, Big Tom? How are you, man?
Stephen, I'm good, brother. Good to hear your voice.
It's good to hear you too, man. Before we get into anything, talk to me about this with Your Call Football. What is this about?
Actually, it's our second season. Mike Sherman, if you remember him, Green Bay Packer head coach, he and I helped launch a league last year where the difference between the NFL, the Alliance, and even the XFL that's starting up, we play pro football. The difference between our league and theirs, you watch their plays, you call our plays. We gave about almost $80,000 away last year. We give $1 million away this year if you call a perfect game, plus $70,000 plus dollars. A lot of ways to win. It's like playing Madden only with live football. The technology is incredible. It allows fans to really be active with the game, the entire game. You know, they call our plays, every play. Something different with our league. There's no punt. Once you cross the 50, you got to go for it on fourth down or kick a field goal. So it's interesting. It's intriguing. It's exciting for the fans because now instead of that one play that they contemplate and talk about, they get to call every play.
How did this stuff get started, man? Talk to me about this because we had a discussion about this a couple of years ago. Talk to me about where this springboarded from.
Yeah, really, George Collin is actually the sole investor, and him and his son, really the technology they really started watching football and playing Madden. They're like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to do that live? And so they developed this technology, and what is critical is the streaming aspect of it. Stephen, as you imagine, has to be spot on. It can't be delayed. And so they've been able to master that. You know, we played 3 games, technically 4 last year, and it was a massive success. We'll play 4 this year. Our first game will start September 25th at 8 p.m. Here, actually, I'm in the Jacksonville Jaguars facility right now where we practice, and this is where we'll play. So it kind of started from that, really. And, they've really developed it and evolved it to where it's become a really exciting thing as far as sports go in the gaming industry.
Merril Hoge right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio and ESPN News. And when you talk about it in the gaming industry, recently we heard stuff about, you remember when the Supreme Court came down with its ruling, basically spearheading, I shouldn't say spearheading, but basically facilitating the states getting more involved in the sport of gambling. And when you look at it from that perspective, I guess what I'm asking is, a league like this, your Call Football, and the kind of things that you just described that you're doing, how much will that play a role, if any at all, into how gambling may become even more of a part of sports? I'm talking about legalized gambling from state to state. How will that factor into it all?
Well, I really don't know specifically. Here's where I think the technology could be implemented, say, from the NFL perspective, is put it into the Pro Bowl. Giving them access, using that technology where the fans actually call the play, and are seriously involved in the in the process of playing spring games in college football. And actually, this technology can be applicable to actually every sport. It's not just football. So that's kind of, I think, the limit, right? There's no, it's never. Well, actually, when it was first presented to me, I thought they were talking about NFL plays being called. I'm like, oh, that ain't never happening. Let's go right there. That ain't never happened.
Right.
But then once I understood it, then I got my head wrapped around it. It was just, it's been a fascinating experience. One of the most exciting things I've done in sports.
Merril, as we look back and allow me to transition into the season that just expired with the Patriots winning the Super Bowl over the Los Angeles Rams just a couple of weeks ago, as you reflect on this past NFL season, what did you peel away from it? There's a lot of things to do. I'm thinking about the quality of play. I'm thinking about, the safety measures. You and I have had discussions in the past about the concussion issue and how that's resonated with the National Football League. Colin Kaepernick, in his case, just got settled against the National Football League. There's so many different directions in which to go when you're talking about the National Football League. As a person that played in it, that has talked about it extensively over the last several years on an elite level, how are you feeling about the NFL game in this day and age?
It's funny. I got a lot of coaches. John Jackson is a teammate of mine. He's one of my coaches. Solomon Wilcox is the other head coach.
Okay.
Ray Sherman, Kurt Schottenheimer, Duffner. These kind of names they've been coaches in the NFL or players in the NFL. And, we're talking about just when we played versus where it exists today. And there's a bunch of ways you can look at it. From a player perspective and a league perspective, I don't think that players that are playing today, if they don't walk away from the game really prepared for life's work, absolutely shame on them. There is so many resources, so much opportunity for players to be successful outside of the game, that if they fail to do it, that's on them. Now, I know that's somewhat just player specific. When you look at, though, what the league is doing in outreach circumstances in all communities, they're evolving and growing there. They're behind the eight ball as far as the concussion thing back in the 90s. They're the pioneers and front runners now, and they don't get credit for that. The way they've went about cleaning up the game, and I've been a part of that process, make the game better and safer than it's ever been, and that leads to, a lot of things that are on the corrupt level, things that have happened that are, and I think over time, people are going to start getting exposed for the message and the narrative. When you think about head trauma, the message you get for CTE, when you hear that's pretty much driven out of Boston University. That may be one of the most corrupt, the CTE center there may be one of the most corrupt departments I've ever seen in a university. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. If you look at how grotesquely they have abused science without finishing the steps of science, yet created a narrative and messaging without doing that, the steps of science that are required, from subconcussion is not even scientific. They haven't even done the steps there. There's no such evidence of concussions causing CTE. CTE has never killed anybody. CTE has never caused somebody to commit suicide. All the narrative that has been driven out of there, they're starting to get exposed now, because here's what they can't do. They can't prove what they're saying. All the things I just said, I can prove. Not only can I prove scientifically what I've just said,
right.
I can prove it physically.
But Merril Hoge, what would you say to folks that would debunk what you just said? And they'll say, look at the changes that the NFL has made. Look at the focus that they have placed on safening the league or trying to do what they can to alleviate some of those concussion concerns that people have had. They would talk about CTE and the studies that have been done by Boston University or whoever it was. They would talk about all of these different things. And they'll say, excuse me, the evidence that was brought to us has basically incited and provoked us to really, really take this and treat this with the seriousness that it deserves, which is what has ultimately led to the implementation of new rules that you yourself have agreed has made the game significantly safer than it once was. What do you say to that?
You'd be grotesquely uninformed. Because in 1991, the Pittsburgh Steelers started cognitive testing. What was Boston University doing then? CT Center wasn't even around. It's two different categories there, Stephen A.
Okay.
When you look at protocols and treatments and therapies, that's a completely different subject than the pattern CTE. That's all that is a pattern in an observation state. Nobody knows what causes it, and nobody knows what it causes. There's people who have this pattern CTE, never played sports, never had a history of head trauma. And I bet you've never heard that, and most people don't know that. And clearly, Boston University doesn't want you to know that because then they get exposed for how corrupt they really are. Now, when you look at that, everybody blends it together. It doesn't belong together. When you look at protocols, the Pittsburgh Steelers were doing cognitive testing in 1991. How do I know that? I was part of that group. It was voluntary. It wasn't mandatory. But keep in mind, the brain world didn't come up with that. Chuck Noll came up with that. Chuck Noll challenges Joe Maroon.
For those that don't know, hold on, Merril. For those that don't know, Chuck Noll is the former head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, by the way, led them to their first 4 Super Bowl titles before Bill Cowher won one and Mike Tomlin won one. Go ahead, Merril. I just wanted to make sure people knew who that was.
Thanks, Stephen A., because why I think that's important is he was much more than a coach. He was a great teacher and a great leader, and he looked outside the scope. And really what happened is one of our quarterback, Bobby Brister, had gotten a concussion, and Joe Maroon, our neurologist on staff, didn't think he should play. And really what Chuck did is he's like, Joe, you just can't come in here on a Friday and tell me he can't play. We need subjective and objective information. So that's really where cognitive testing was really stimulating. So Joe Maroon and Dr. Lovell get together, and they develop cognitive testing. So in 1991, it started to evolve. And when you think about protocols where we are today, and quite honestly, that's what the NFL gets nailed for. They just get nailed for being late to implement it. Okay, they didn't have stuff sitting behind that nobody else knew about. Okay, I can prove that to be wrong, but that would take an entire show to have that discussion. But if anybody goes, oh, it was a conspiracy, they knew all this. No, they didn't. They just failed to react quick enough. Because in 1991, I'm going to tell you this, when that happens, you go look at what the history is of head trauma and the brain world and what they really knew at that time. Nobody was more advanced at that time, and they were just sitting on things. So that being said, there's just 2 different areas, Stephen A. Protocols, treatments, all those things have made actually sports better and safer than it's ever been. But we have a fear factor now, especially, and I'm more passionate about youth sports, quite honestly. I'm not really I'm not concerned about the NFL. I'm concerned about youth sports, the mom and dads that are hearing this narrative that if their son or daughter have a concussion, they're going to get CTE. There's no such evidence of that. Subconcussion isn't even scientific. They have yet to even accomplish one step of the science requirements to make it scientific. But there's a lot of literature that we'll talk about. It's poorly defined. It's misleading. It's science fiction.
You have always been very, very adamant in your position. And your position, for those of you who don't know, you're incredibly consistent with how you feel. You and I have been talking about this for years, and you have never wavered one bit from your position. Do you believe, Merril Hoge, that assuming that what you say is correct, and Boston University and others and the stuff that they put out about CTE and what have you, are you of the mindset that this is a concerted effort to ruin football in America?
Well,
is that your mentality?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt they're attacking youth football, because that is the one area that they can't fight like the NFL. They can't fight like the NCAA. They don't have the type of money. It is about that, and it's about money. And listen, they're going to people are going to start digging. I mean, it's already started. The bricks have started to fall. They're going to start getting exposed for what they have done, what they have said, because they can't prove any of their stuff. If you look at some of their websites, they have subconcussion caused CT. There is no scientific evidence of that. Shoot, you haven't even done the scientific steps to make subconcussion a thing. That'd be like if you went on a roller coaster, jumped on a trampoline.
Okay.
Or everybody in the world has done stuff like that. We'd all be doomed.
Well, let me get away. Let me get
Go ahead.
away from the actual issue of CTE and all of that stuff, and instead just focus on football from this premise. There is no doubt that it is a violent sport. There is no doubt that there are residual effects from playing the sport that can be incredibly, debilitating. For example, not that this has anything to do with the head, but just watch Earl Campbell, who used to play football for the Houston Oilers. He walking around. Oh my God! You see so many guys, and the violence that exists in the sport. There are people that have elevated their level of concern as it pertains to that, and has used that as impetus to say, football, you know what? It's not. It's so much more damaging than people realize, and maybe we should go away from that. I'm not of that thinking. As far as I'm concerned, MMA, boxing, all of this stuff, that comes with it. You know what you're signing up for. But there are people who say stuff like that. What do you say to those people, Merril Hoge?
No, I'm going to tell you this. I don't know of it. I don't know in the history of it. I don't know anybody that's been forced to play in the NFL. I don't know of it. I mean, that is a choice. Let's see what's funny. I had a FedEx driver, and just so we're balanced here, this happens to the UPS driver that comes to my house almost regularly. Both of them get out, start limping. And I'm like, well, what happened to you? Oh, I'm getting out of this truck for 10 years. I got to get a new hip. I'm like, wow, okay. Well, they better stop letting you get in the truck and getting out there, because wear and tear. I mean, there's risks we run with everything,
right,
Stephen A. To say that you're going to live a risk-free life, there's not risk in anything. Sure there is. In fact, when we look at where we are in sports today, those risks, we've minimized them at its greatest degree when you look at equipment, instruction. Okay, keep in mind, we've been playing football for nearly 100 years. Think about this. For 90 of it, we never did anything about head trauma. Nothing. You have hundreds of millions of people who are living today and well into their 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, and played in an environment where you couldn't even drink water, keep in mind. Equipment was paper mache to what we have today. All of those things existed. You literally have hundreds of millions of people to pick from, and they can't find, meaning Boston University, one person that go, aha, because you played contact sports, you have issues later in life. There's not 1 ounce of evidence of that. We have made sports better and safer than they've ever been, and parents are being blinded by this false narrative that they're driving, and they're missing what is really should be exciting for them, that if their son or daughter would have a concussion, the treatments that are available now to care for your kids before they return to the environment of whatever activity they are on, that's what we need to share with them. That's what they need to know. If they knew that, they'd be much more empowered about letting their kids be active and knowing how to take care of them if an accident were to happen.
Merril Hoge, I got a strange question for you. In light of everything that you're saying, do you think that the NFL may have gone too far in the opposite direction to be entirely too safe? Because I run across defensive players all the time in the National Football League that are losing their minds and pulling their hair out of their head because they're so disgusted with how these rules favor offensive players. They literally talk as if you can't have bad breath and breathe in a quarterback's face before getting penalized. That's how pathetic they think it is. What do you say to that?
Well, listen, I'm going to tell you this. The burden falls on the defender. I'm never going to argue that. I've been on the rules committee and helped with a lot of cleaning up the game. Now, the one thing that's never been put in there, Stephen A., which gets confused, you still can hit the other guy as hard as you want. It's just hit him in the right zone with the right technique. Now, the start of this year, yeah, that was a little bit of a debacle in, the changes of hitting the quarterback. It took them a while to really get the right parameters in place, and it looked bad earlier, but they got that cleaned up. It took about half the season, and then there were some hits that were just like mind-boggling, head shakers, but it took the officials a little while. They just have huge responsibility on them. So, and human error is going to be a part of all of this. But when you really look at the game, hitting the other guy as hard as you can the right way is what they're asking you to do. You're going to get out of position at times.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but that's easier said than done, Merril. I mean, if you've been playing football one way forever and then they change it up on you, that's kind of hard, isn't it?
Well, actually, no. Stephen A., nobody has ever, in the history of football, nobody has ever run these drills. Throwing your elbow to the head, leading and launching with the crown of your helmet. Nobody practices it. I'm doing it. I'm running the league right now. It is one of the greatest professional environments I have ever seen from a tackling perspective. One of our very first games last year, I was like, from a professional environment, and we never had one live scrimmage. Our first live event was a game. I'm like, it was one of the most incredible professional tackling performances I have ever seen at a professional level. Professionals are taught how to tackle, how to wrap up. Now, what happened way back is the game eroded, elbows started flying, leading and launching, hitting at the head. But you don't practice those. Those aren't drills that you do. They just said, we got to clean that up. Let's go back to playing the game right. I mean, is it a physical is there a physical part of this game? Absolutely. That's what drives most people to it. They love that aspect. That's what I loved about it. That's the challenge of the game. But the way it is designed, the cleaning up of it today, has made it a much better game, and really at all levels, not just the NFL level.
Merril Hoge, appreciate you as always, man. Always great talking to you. Your Call Football, that's what you're a part of. Everybody needs to do everything they can to find out as much about it as we possibly can. Always good talking to you, buddy. I'll talk to you down the line, okay?
Love you, brother. See you, buddy.
Same here, my man. The one and only Merril Hoge right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Don't get him started about the CTEs, concussions in the National Football League. I mean, whoa. Boston University, he goes off every chance he gets about them. He won't let up. Talking about they're trying to ruin youth football. It's about that. It's about money. Somewhere, somehow. It'll be interesting to see those folks in the room together. I'd give them the platform for First Take to go head-to-head with each other and debate that one day. That would be something special to behold. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live, Stephen A., ESPN Radio. We'll get back to your calls and more, some NBA stuff in a minute as well. Anthony Davis, Boston Celtics, Kyrie Irving, the list goes on and on. Stick around, don't touch that dial. It's Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, when you're hiring, you don't want to waste time sorting through dozens of irrelevant resumes. You want an efficient way to get to a short list of qualified candidates. That's why you need Indeed.com. It's being brought to you by Prilosec OTC. Kick your own acid habit with Prilosec OTC, please. Plus, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, making it easy to bundle your home and your car insurance. Let's get back to the phones at 888-SAY-ESPN. Markeisha, you're live with Stephen A. How are you? Good afternoon.
I'm good. How are you, Stephen?
I'm doing all right. Thank you so much for calling. What's going on?
Absolutely. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to ask you about Colin's settlement information. Do you honestly think it would be fair for the other players to ask about the details, given that most would say he virtually suffered alone? And what I mean by that is, I completely agree with you that the issue transcends him and that the other players participated and supported him, but they only did so to an extent. Most people would say that they continued to suit up and play where he was completely blackballed. And if they wanted to make sure that the NFL changed their behaviors or made decisions in the future that would not have such a social impact in a negative way, then they should have been more instrumental in demanding those changes.
Well, first of all, I don't know about the players. I said what I want to know. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important to point this out. Nobody's saying that he has to do anything. We understand that the person who made the sacrifice was him. We understand that wholeheartedly because, again, when LeBron James, for example, was stating, you know what, I stand with Colin Kaepernick. I kneel with Colin Kaepernick. Actually, I don't recall any NBA player kneeling with Colin Kaepernick. They locked arms with one another. Not a single one of them took a knee. So let's keep that in mind. But I think the important point to recognize here is what I'm saying is this. Colin Kaepernick in terms of what were you asked to capitulate to? It's not a matter of whether you do it or don't do it. It's a matter of highlighting what the NFL asked of you and what, in essence, you agreed to. Not monetarily, because your money's your business. But in terms of, would you stand for the national anthem? Are you still going to kneel? Are you going to play in the National Football League? Did you agree never to pursue an NFL career again? What exactly is it that you capitulate to? I think that would be something good for people to know, because I think that would provide closure as it pertains to this particular situation.
And it would also be a way of holding the NFL accountable.
Correct.
We want to know, what did they agree to?
Exactly.
What are you going to do in the future?
Well, no. What did they ask of you? Because it'll tell us a lot. It'll tell us a lot. If you're asking him to shut up, don't engage in any political views whatsoever, social justice, racial inequality, don't touch that subject, Colin Kaepernick. What if they asked him that?
Right.
You
Thank you so much.
I want to know.
You.
I want to know. Thank you so much. That's just me. I want to know. Chris, you live. Christopher, you live at Stephen A. What's up?
Yeah, hello, Stephen A.
What's going on?
Love the show, bro.
Thank you.
Love everything you do. I just want to chime in on the Kaepernick situation. Now, it was a lot of people emotionally invested in Colin Kaepernick, and we don't know, and I don't want to use the term folded, but that's what I'm getting out of it, because and I hear a lot of people comparing him to Ali. Ali was in his prime. Ali was at the top of his game, and he didn't. And he won his case. He didn't get. He didn't. I feel like he just got reimbursed for the time he lost. That's a very legitimate argument. That's a very legitimate argument. I can't. No one, in my opinion, can summarily dismiss what you just highlighted. That might very well be the case. Yeah. So he just got reimbursed for his time.
And listen, and if that's what's happened, Christopher, guess what? It's not a crime. All I'm trying to say is that you spoke out on an issue, and you tacitly, and in some cases directly, encouraged people to support you and your cause. And it was the right cause. Nothing wrong with it. Colin Kaepernick is no villain here. I'm not trying to come across by that in any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that when I heard the news that the man settled his collusion suit against the National Football League, his grievance against the National Football League, I wanted to know what the settlement entailed, not money-wise. The other stuff, the stuff that galvanized a nation of people. Some people would sit up there and say, divided a lot of folks. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing, because we need to be divided. If you are for racial oppression and social injustice, you're on the opposite side of me. So I don't mind that division. But I want to know what the settlement entailed, because I want to know what the NFL asked of this man. And I want to know what he capitulated to. That's what I want to know. We come this far, I want to know. That's just where I'm at with it. Appreciate the call, Chris. Thank you, man. Let's go to Daniel. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Daniel?
I'm sorry, it's Danielle.
Danielle, how are you? My apologies. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? I'm a big fan of the show.
Thank you.
And I do have a question in regards to the Eric Reid portion of the settlement.
Yep.
Because I have a question of whether he's going to be kneeling for the anthem, because he's been kneeling.
I don't know, but I do know that he signed a 3-year extension with the Carolina Panthers. And that he hasn't spoken about the specific issue of kneeling, but he's made it very, very clear to the NFL that social issues are not going anywhere. And this stuff is going to come over the stadium wall and into NFL arenas and stadiums everywhere. This is not going away. Dr. Harry Edwards has spoken about it in eloquent fashion as well. So I don't anticipate that Eric Reid is going anywhere. And you have who's an individual who's considered to be a relatively progressive owner, and Mr. Tepper in Carolina, that doesn't seem hell-bent or dogged against Eric Reid's willingness to express himself. So who knows what's going to happen?
My thought about Eric Reid is that if he does not take a knee anymore, is he being a sellout the same way that he accused Malcolm Jenkins of being a sellout?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I've always been of the mindset that Eric Reid was a bit excessive and wrong in coming at Malcolm Jenkins, the way that he did. It was uncalled for. It was not necessary. He felt like he had co-opted the movement, et cetera, et cetera. I don't view it that way based on the details that I've been told about what transpired during negotiations and things of that nature. And I think the most important thing to point out is this. Colin Kaepernick and ultimately Eric Reid and their willingness to take a knee was against society, social injustice, racial inequality in this nation. They weren't talking about the NFL. They were working for the NFL, and they were using the NFL platform that they had available to them to make a case about things that ailed our society. But their ire wasn't directed at the National Football League. So it's perfectly within the National Football League's right, in my estimation, to stand up and say, well, wait a minute. If you don't have a problem with us, then why are you causing us problems? Because by doing this, you're assisting in turning millions upon millions of people against us as if we're the ones that are causing these problems. And I think that's something that's relevant and can't be ignored.
All right. Thank you for taking my call, Stephen A.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Chris. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Stephen A., big fan.
Thank you. Go ahead, man.
I haven't heard anybody talking about Westbrook today. Man, he was terrible from the three-point line. What was he doing?
So what? Who cares? It was an All-Star game. Why do you care? It was an exhibition. It was a meaningless exhibition game. Why would you call up here to complain about that? The man's had like 10 or 11 straight triple doubles. Oklahoma City has come up the rear and to be arguably the most formidable opposition to the Golden State Warriors. And you will call up here and be on hold, and it ain't even to complain about Russell Westbrook during the regular season. It's to complain about Russell Westbrook's shooting during an exhibition All-Star game? That's all you got?
Yeah, I guess so.
Have a nice day, man. Go ahead. He knows that was ridiculous. Jake, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
All right, Stephen, what's going on? It's Jake from Seattle. So the issue I have is not with you. It's with your rhetoric right now. In 2012, and it's important that I say this because there are people all over the country listening. There was a young man named Sergeant Brandon Hawking. He so happened to be my brother. And he was killed in action, drove over a roadside IED. It was a man that had a whole future ahead of him. And there's people who on every Sunday, and it doesn't have to be football. It could be, you just talked about the All-Star NBA game. It could be the Mariners. We sit together where we stand up and we put all of our division on hold. And you just said that you thought as a country we should be divided. And yes, it has to do with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem. And
Sir, first of all, that was your brother that passed away?
I respect you. I think
listen to me. Was that your brother that you said that passed away?
Absolutely.
Okay.
A young man with two children and a wife.
What I wanted to say is that my condolences to you and your family for your loss. That's the first thing. My heart goes out to you and your family. What I did say, just to quote me accurately, I said, if you are for racial injustice and social inequality, you are divided against me. We are not on the same side. That is what I said.
Okay, so check this out. Division and racial injustice is nothing to do with coming together. Those are antithesis to one another. I mean, let's be frank. You're a logical guy. You can make an argument with sound evidence. Those two things are the exact opposite. So why, when we come together of people of all race, all kinds, and we're supporting not just the Seattle Seahawks or, gosh darn it, I miss my Sonics, right? Or the Seattle Mariners, who everyone thinks is going to be a bust this year. We come together and we put our right hand over our heart. We take our cap off. We make a point to say whatever it is that divides us, whatever it is that separates us, whatever it is that is unjust about our actions on a daily basis when we walk into the grocery store, when we're in the middle of a line talking.
So you're alluding to standing for the national anthem. You're saying that that's something that brings us all together. Why support somebody taking a knee? Is that your question?
It's an opportunity.
No. I'm asking you, is that your question? Because, sir, if you want me to let you speak, I'll let you speak until the time, and then I'll cut you off because it's my show. But if it's if it's a rhetorical question. If you want an answer, I have an answer. Okay. I have an answer.
Okay,
you ready for the answer? You ready for the answer?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Again, this is not about your brother because obviously my heart goes out to you and your family, and I wish he was still here with you. I've lost a brother myself. I understand where you're coming from. But let's also make sure that we understand something here. If you have an individual or individuals or a group of people in this nation who are disenfranchised and desolate, and they can point to systemic issues and policies that keeps them down, and they have a problem with it, for you to sit up there and say in a country that allows freedom of speech, in a country that gives you the inalienable right as an American to fight for your very civilization and what you believe a civilized society should entail. It is not for you to sit up there and say that Colin Kaepernick or anybody else for that matter is being divisive. When in fact, when they could sit around and turn around and they can make the argument, oh no, we're talking to you and trying to showcase for you what indeed needs to transpire in order to bring us together. Because your definition of together isn't applicable with ours. We don't view it as together. We don't view it as one society, equality for all, and what have you. That's not our experience. And if that's what he is saying, sir, you can't debunk that.
No, I'm not. But I will also say that it takes a whole heck of a lot of courage, you're right, to have that conversation. And the conversation doesn't take place, in my opinion, right? And listen, and I think to be fair, you know, what you're saying is absolutely on point. I'm not arguing with the underlying actual events in our society that have taken place that need to be talked about, that need to be discussed. And sports, my heavens, you know, it's kind of like standing in a grocery line. Like I said, it's an opportunity for people from all
I need you to rush, though. I need you to rush because I got a hard commercial break. I need you to rush. Go ahead.
You know what? Without bloviating, I'll just say this. I disagree with the time and the place and the presentation because it has nothing to do with having a lack of sensitivity to what's going on. And there are people all over the country who watch your show, who are sports fans, who come together and they see it as an opportunity to really be unique.
I gotta run. I appreciate the call. I would not have protested. I've often said that. But he does have a right as an American citizen to do it without fear of being blackballed. And that's what happened. And that can't be escaped. But I got to run. 888-SAY-ESPN. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance with more than 30 unique coverage options available. Progressive knows small business. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com. Back to close out the show in a minute with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Need game tickets? Find your seats at Vivid Seats.
Hey, what's up? It's Will Kane. Coming up right after Stephen A. Smith. Join us on The Will Kane Show, live on ESPN Radio, Sirius XM Channel 80.
To you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no fees or minimums that can be opened in 5 minutes. Capital One. Hey! What's in your wallet? 888-SAY-ESPN. That's always the number to call. I'm getting ready to get on out of here today. Got to say it's good to be back. I'm just curious. I really, really want to know. What's in that settlement? I want to know what the NFL asked Colin Kaepernick to capitulate to. And what did he agree to capitulate to? That's just me. Y'all might not be curious about it, but I am. Can't wait till the show progresses this week. Got a lot of stuff to talk about the NBA and even some Major League Baseball as well. So stick around. I'll talk to y'all.